Hi everyone, it's nice to meet you. I'm Akinyi Ochieng and I'm talking today about developing your leadership strength. I'll just give everyone a few moments to join and then we can start the discussion. Oh, we have one person who's joined, that's great. Hi, welcome. I'll give it just one more minute and then get started with the conversation. Okay, let's kick off. It's my pleasure to introduce myself. My name is Akinyi Ochieng. I am a Gambian, Kenyan, American strategist, public affairs advisor, and startup advisor. And I am passionate about technology, I'm passionate about community, and I'm passionate about ensuring that technology is linked to furthering human development. I began my career in development, working in Ghana for a small NGO that's doing multi-stakeholder group work in rural communities in Ghana and across West Africa, and then transitioned to work in technology, particularly in fintech. And so today I am I sit in the marketing and communications team at a leading UK fintech company. And I'm also an Esther Oklo Fellow at both Emerging Markets Group, where I look at how can we foster more regional integration and more communication across the global south in terms of investment, in terms of dialogue, etc. So any questions from those who've joined? So today's conversation focuses on developing your leadership strength. And I can talk about how I view leadership as well as how that's manifested throughout my career. One of the things that I think is integral to being a leader is, oh, okay, we have someone who's commented. One of the things that I view as integral to being a leader is someone who is about the work and less about the glory. I think that if you lead by focusing on your work and the quality and enhancing and empowering teams, then the rest follows. I'm not interested in chasing a who's list or I'm interested in being someone who is focused on delivering high quality. And empowering others. And by empowering, I mean very tangibly giving people the tools to succeed. My success is my team's success, not only because it leaves a legacy, but also because in the times in which you're not there, you need your team to be enabled to thrive and to move forward. And I'm just going to pull up a list of questions that Women in Tech Africa was kind enough to share with me. So if you bear with me 1 minute, and forgive me and my tech unsavviness, despite being someone who works in tech, and that might take me a bit to pull up these questions. Hi, Ola. Hi, Evelyn. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining. So if I am asked to define what my proudest leadership accomplishment was, it's something that, unsurprising as to what, and feeds into what I was saying earlier, is this idea of being very community-centered and being about doing the work, and also not being afraid to try new things and take challenges. So early in my career, I was working for a multi-stakeholder NGO in Ghana. and had to design a rather large public-private partnership, a multi-million-dollar public-private partnership. That was something that I hadn't had any experience in. It was something that's hi Liza, hi Eliana, nice to have you join as well. Just going back to my earlier example, I was discussing, what one of my greatest accomplishments, or what I view as one of my greatest accomplishments, and that is building an initiative that is going to empower 16 million people, 16 million female rural farmers across West Africa, giving them a livelihood, elevating them, connecting them to global supply chains. And that's something that I did not only myself, but something that I did as a part of a broader team that I spearheaded, securing the funding for that initiative. And I think that why that was successful was because it was something that I was trying for the first time. And I wasn't afraid to ask questions. I think that being a leader requires a great deal of humility and a willingness to be collaborative. And in a sense, I think that's why women are uniquely positioned to be excellent leaders, because I think that women are often collaborative by nature, community-oriented by nature. And so I think that that's something unique that women bring to the table. And I certainly try to bring to my leadership style. It's one that is collaborative. It's one that lacks hubris, and is very much rooted in team and very much rooted in community and outcomes. Okay, we have this great lofty vision. So how do we break that down and distill it into the steps needed to achieve success? I know we have people from Mauritius. And where's everyone else who's joined us from? So for those who've just joined, I was just saying that I am half Gambian, half Kenyan, quite unusual, mixed West and East Africa. But I was born in the UK and raised in the US. But I've always maintained deep roots and connections to my heritage, both on the Kenyan and Gambian side. And I'm currently living in London, working for a leading fintech company, and I'm also a fellow to both the Emerging Markets Group, an investment advisory firm based out of Nairobi and Dubai. With both, I work on fostering regional integration and more collaboration and investment across the global south. So we have Mauritius, we have London via me. Anyone else who's watching want to share where they're from, or any questions you might have? Okay, let me launch into one more question. Okay. So sorry for the delay. So to get back to the discussion today, as Women in Tech and in Tech Africa kindly outlined, and some of the topics that they like to describe. So I would say I am I'm a woman of very many interests, as many of my friends and colleagues can attest. I am someone who I'm a food blogger. I work in the technology field. I have been active in investment promotion. And I think what unites these interests is that I'm deeply passionate about community and about interconnectedness and weaving connections across the global south. What can what's happening in India teach us about urbanization in Nigeria? What can South Korea's development trajectory teach us about the nascent technology industry in Kenya? I think that culture understanding culture informs is kind of a layer that comes before everything else. And I'll give you a tangible example, which really readily comes to the fore in fintech. You have to understand your market. And so to understand your market, you have to understand community, you have to have deep ties in community. And someone who's always tried to do that. And I think when you look at how do you understand community, often the ways in which communities overlap and differ in terms of belief systems, in terms of values, in terms of ways of doing things, often bubbles to the forefront when you look at passions that unite us. And one of the passions that I'm really interested in, of course, is food, and how food is a catalyst for conversation, how food is kind of the great normalizer, equalizer. We can all connect and understand each other over a bowl of jollof rice, and if you're West African, Benachin, as Gambians would know it. We can foster relationships based on those very basic things, and that's food, that's fashion, that's history, that's sport, and so I use that as a catalyst and a beginning point to understand, what common ties we share and how we can then use that as a foundation to understand what our shared vision can be. That's kind of the thread that unites those experiences. Any other questions from anyone? And I see we have some new joiners. If you want to share where you're from. So I'll step back for a second and talk about how I ended up in technology, being someone who came from the development sphere. So as I said earlier in the live, I was working in development in Ghana and across West Africa, and then moved to the UK and really immersed myself in the technology industry. And that transition was made easier because I'm a student of my environment. Even as I was working in Ghana, even as I was working in agriculture and in development, I was really keenly interested in what was happening around me, and interested in the technology trends that were affecting the community that I lived in, and engaging with people at the forefront of those trends. So I don't think that where you are now should ever hinder your curiosity about other industries and about what's happening in your environment. And so that's what I've always tried to do, and that's why it was kind of easier for me to make that transition into a different industry. Also because I am a communications and public affairs specialist first and foremost. So there's a very relationship-centered, that's a relationship-centered profession. And so having relationships, understanding how cultures engage, understanding how trends and narratives, that is born out of being a naturally curious person, and that's something that's central to my leadership. I think if you are curious, then you create opportunities not only for yourself and for others. And then when you open those doors, then you can create new possibilities. I think that's, and this might sound trite in a way, which I have chosen to explain my own journey to my very conservative parents, is that I think if you lean into what you're passionate about, I think that if you kind of follow your interests really rigorously and wholeheartedly, one thing naturally leads to another. I think that if you were to ask, for example, Mark Zuckerberg, when he was starting out early in his career, what he was going to do, he probably could have told you it was about community, it was about networks, but how that would manifest and what might not have been necessarily clear. And that's the way that I view my career. The things that I'd be doing 15 years from now, 20 years from now, they might not exist yet. But what I can commit to and what will inform what that 15 and 20 years out looks like is an understanding of what my skill sets are, understanding of what I'm passionate about, and the values that I bring to the table, and my working style, and my morals. And so that's something that informs my journey. Hi, so we have some other new joiners. Any questions from the crowd based on anything I've said so far? I would love to hear from some of you in terms of what you're interested in, what you're doing, and really make this a dialogue. Oh, I see we have some people coming in and out. Let's skip about 20 seconds. How do you get others to accept your ideas? I think that, thanks for that question, Samira. I think that it's really critical to always understand the viewpoints of others within your organization. I sit in the fintech company that I work at, I sit within our marketing team. And so as much as I'm coming up with new ideas, new campaigns, new initiatives, it's important to understand what are the interests from other stakeholders in the company. It's important to understand how what is the commercial team's interest in this? How will this impact legal and compliance? How will this affect finances? And to come to the drawing table with a holistic view on how your idea will impact these other areas and how it would be beneficial. And on the other side, how it might be a hindrance or a challenge for another person in the team. How are you going to mitigate that? That's one thing that I think is really critical in terms of getting people on board with your ideas and thinking about it in terms of your objective, but also the key results that you need to reach that objective. It's important to know where you want to go, but to break that down into what is achievable in a month, in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year. What is 5 years from now? What is the impact of this on your larger business? That's the way I like to approach those kind of conversations. We have someone who's asked about understanding your market. And this is where I think that a lot of people don't understand that communications is an integral part of the company and really should be, and communications is an element of strategy, an add-on to strategy, right? Because I think to understand your product, to understand your vision, you need to understand really who you are and focus. And I think that applies personally as well as in a larger organization. So having that focus and honing in on what are you trying to do now? How does that serve an existing need? How does that tap into a pain point? How does that open up a new market or possibility? I think that being rigorously focused on that helps in your journey. I think that there's a question, what makes a good leader? I think that a good leader is someone who doesn't necessarily do the greatest thing, the sexiest thing. It's someone who empowers others to do good things, to do great things. That's something I alluded to earlier, and I want to re-emphasize. A great leader is only as good as a good team. And so I think it's important to really think critically about how can you, in your journey, contribute to the success of your team and the success of your organization, and what you bring to the table that's unique, that might be different from what others can contribute. Hi all. Any other questions from the audience? And thanks to everyone who's joined. One thing that I want to address, right, is that this idea of what is a leader, and I think this almost fetishization of leadership. A leader isn't someone who's necessarily a CEO. A leader isn't necessarily someone who has to be an entrepreneur. A leader doesn't have to be a head of team, etc. A leader is simply, I think, well, first of all, stepping back, I think that you don't have to hold a position to be a leader. I think a leader is someone who sets the bar high for not only their own contributions to organization, but sets the bar high for others. Someone who encourages others to step up to the plate by their own example. And that's why I think that the best leaders are not those who necessarily delegate, but those who aren't afraid to roll up their sleeves if and when needed. Of course, delegation is an important part of any leadership journey. If you are running a team, you shouldn't be involved in the day-to-day minutia. But I think the important thing is communicating to your team that you can and are willing to do the hard work, that you are someone who isn't afraid to roll up their sleeves when necessary, and that you can and do trust your team to live up to challenges and to push themselves, and within a framework of, I think you don't want an organization to fail, but you do want people to take risks and then know that they have the support when things might not work out as expected. Any other questions from the audience? So I see so many people have joined. Where are the new folks from? Curious to hear about who's tuned in for today. So we have someone from Ireland, someone from Nigeria, from Mauritius. This is a really global community. Any leadership-related books that have inspired me? I think that, one book that I read recently that had on my mind is Quiet, which focuses on introverts and how you can better engage introverts in an organization. And I think that's one thing that's quite difficult, at least in particularly, I think, in the North American, European, and to some extent, particularly West African leadership styles, is this notion that you have to be extroverted to be a leader. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that there is a space for introverts to thrive, and we have to think about the different personalities within any team and organization, and what structures enable, for example, some of our more introverted peers to really thrive. So that's one book that I would highly recommend. Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Never Stops Talking. Any other questions? Let's see. Okay, so in my journey, when did I pivot in my approach to working style and leadership, and what caused that shift? I was growing up a straight A student. I was someone who, always prided myself on raising my hand first, always volunteering, always being active, always being participatory. And I think that it took me burning out to realize that you can't do everything. And one of the most powerful words that you have in your arsenal is the word no. And knowing when you have the capacity and when you don't. And being honest with yourself and honest with others early in the process so that you don't disappointing others. So I'll give you an example. I'm often asked to advise on projects, contribute to various initiatives, etc. And so there are a lot of demands on my time. I work full time, and these commitments have to be done outside of my day to day. So I have to be really disciplined about what I say yes to and what I truly have the capacity to do. And in one instance, there was a project that I absolutely would have loved to participate in, but knowing kind of the constraints of my time, it was a question of realizing that even though I loved the project, I would not have been able to perform at the best of my ability in that instance, and that would have hampered the success. And so that was a really hard no for me. And just realizing that you can't do everything. So what are you uniquely positioned to do that maybe you can do better than others in an organization and you should take ownership of? And where can you bring in others and empower them to take a piece of the project and own it? And so that's something that I've recently come to realize more than ever, that you can't do everything, that you need to know when to say no, and you need to figure out where you are uniquely placed to add value and where you can yield to others and allow them to flourish and contribute. How do I balance time between all my tasks? Oh, this is the never-ending question. Thanks for asking, Ola. It's really difficult. I think that you really have to be disciplined and communicate with others about what your time constraints are, and always build in a buffer. I think it's always better to under-promise and over-deliver than over-promise and under-deliver. So if I tell you that I can get something done by Friday, I'm going to get it done by Friday, because I built in my arsenal that I am going to get it done by Wednesday, and then I built in that extra buffer so I'm not disappointing someone. I'm also someone who rigorously believes in time management. I don't procrastinate. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I think that the easiest way to go about that is to try and infuse joy into the things that you have to do, and to start off with the things that you're passionate about, and switch off between that and the things that might seem mundane or harder to get yourself excited about. And just kind of interspersing those moments of joy throughout your day and throughout your journey, I think is critical to being able to accomplish your tasks. A characteristic that I believe every leader should possess, humility, and not being afraid to say, I don't know. But let me do some research, let me consult others and get back to you. I don't believe in speaking out of turn about things I don't know about. I think that what is more impressive to me personally when I work with people is when they're willing to admit when they don't know something, but that they know where to tap the resources and how they can think about arriving at a solution or an answer to my question. So I think that to answer that question directly again, it's about humility, and it's about humility coupled with a tenacity and I don't know the answer, but I will find it, and this is how I will do it. Any other questions? Well, thank you all. I think that actually wraps up the time for the live today. But thank you all for joining, and thank you for the really thoughtful and insightful questions. And if I'm just going to summarize, I know people have joined at various times today. What I think makes a successful leader, qualities that I seek to develop myself and also nurture in others, and then some kind of homework recommended reading. One, it's being someone who's focused on community, someone who is understands people and understands how to empower people and empower teams to do their best. Realizing the power of saying no, realizing what you are uniquely positioned to do and where you might be able to allow others to to grow and stretch themselves. I think, and again, a quote that I really love that I just want to reemphasize is, my favorite words are possibilities, opportunities, and curiosity. If you're curious, you create opportunities, and then when you open the doors, you create possibilities. So that's something that I really want to emphasize to you all, and something that I've taken to heart, especially in the last few years. And then to really lean into your interests and be driven by your passions and your values. And then the rest naturally follows. So, and then that's something that I think has led me from working in the development sphere to working in technology to being someone whose day-to-day is in communications, but is also active in the investments world. It's leaning into your interests, and then eventually they, I think, begin to align, and being open and honest and having a generosity of spirit. So thank you to everyone who joined today. Really appreciate your questions and your participation. And feel free to reach out to me via Twitter, via LinkedIn. And thank you to Women in Tech in Africa for this opportunity today. Enjoy the rest of your days. Bye.